welcome everybody to another episode of the Pierce Brothers. Today we're doing another campfire discussion with no campfire. It's too dark and we can't film in the dark with wintertime like this, and we all got off work and all that, and it's dark, and so we're filming in Porter's reloading room today. If you're new to the channel, we do group videos pretty often and discuss different topics in the gun industry, and for today's video we're discussing Grail Guns.
Santa's wish list.
Santa's wish list, yeah. Whatever your wish list gun is, a gun that you wanted that's still obtainable. It has to be, that's kind of the criteria here, is it's still an obtainable gun, not like an outlandish, I want this specific gun that I'm never going to be able to find or get. You know, it's got to be obtainable. So, before we get going, make sure and check out our channel memberships, our Patreon, like, share, subscribe, all that. And, yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning in to watch. So, we'll let Porter go first since he's Mr. Simple with one simple gun.
Yeah, I got one simple gun. It's like everything else, like you see it, you buy it, you know, or whatever. But this gun will cost some money, so I'm like, okay, it's probably like maybe when I'm old, fat, and rich.
Old, fat, and rich.
I really want a belt-fed 22 machine gun. Like, it'd just be so much fun.
What good is it?
Down at the top of your stairs, when the intruders come in, you riddle them full of 22 rounds. Long, slow, painful death.
Well, but if it's a belt fed, you got a lot of ammo.
Yeah.
I had a girlfriend in college, and her dad had anyways, he was a dealer that had the ability to have full auto and all that, and he had an M16 that was 22 long rifle, so that was kind of fun.
Just take and mill the receiver, make it a belt fed, so you can have like 2,000 rounds sitting there all ready to go.
You know, growing up, Porter was always the brother that like he'd go through a box of ammo faster than anybody because he'd just blaze away. Like there was no patience at all. It was just like bam, 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 reload, bam, 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 bam.
Hey, I was trying to practice my quick draw. Okay?
So this fits Porter pretty well, I would say.
Now you can see why I started him on a single shot when he got a little older.
Now Porter's learned the art of one shot and making it count. You know, he's
supposedly,
yeah.
Hey, you know, when was the last time I had to shoot a deer twice? Okay.
Yeah, good, valid point.
Oh, you don't want me going there.
All right. Anyways, that's Porter's choice. Dad, I guess what's your first choice?
Well, you know, I could just say a Colt single action and we're doing one at a time.
Yeah.
And you guys would all say, but Dad, you've got like a zillion Colt single actions. It's like, yeah, you're right. But and this is a Grail gun that I'll probably never see. But my grandfather was an original Arizona Ranger. His name was Joe Pierce. He was born in 1873 on the Arizona frontier. His father is actually, there's a statue of him downtown Taylor, Arizona, because he was considered the founder of that town. So my grandfather was pretty prolific in his writing and left a lot of stories to the family. He died 3 years before I was born. He was actually one of the last surviving Rangers of the original Arizona Rangers, which went from 1901 to 1909. The Arizona Territory basically legislated them into being, and by the same thing, after they went in and arrested thousands of men and bad guys, and I mean, they dealt with the worst of the worst elements being on the border. People came from other states, Texas and whatever, that were wanted for hanging crimes in other states. They gravitated to Arizona, so it was known for being lawless. And the wrestling and murders and stuff that went on was just too much. And they finally said, okay, we've got to do something. So he was actually, he actually had a Winchester 94 30-30, and one of the very first ones made. And when it wouldn't go through a big old cactus one day, he decided to get something bigger. So he bought an 1895 and 30-40 Craig. And he also had been carrying a Colt single action 45 Colt, and when an Arizona Ranger was killed by the Smith gang that wore badge number 13, it opened up the position for him. So he got on the Coronado Trail and rode from his home in the White Mountains of Arizona down to Bisbee and met with Captain Thomas Reining, but he'd never met him before. Thomas Reining, by the way, was an incredible lawman. He'd been a soldier. He did a lot to bring up the training skill and level of the Rangers. But my grandfather went in. He was trying to win some money in Bisbee, and he found out that the roulette wheel was rigged and this and that, and he was losing money left and right. And he finally thought, "Oh, forget this." So he went out, and there was this Mexican guy that had these silver dollars hung on a string, and if you could shoot him and cut him down, cut the string with your handgun, you could win the silver dollars. So, but if you missed, of course, you lost your silver dollars. So he went back, and he's sitting there winning his money back and dropping the silver dollars as he went down, reloading and shooting some more, and he's winning back all the money he'd lost on the crooked roulette table. And pretty soon he heard this man behind him say, pretty good shooting. I've seen better, but that's pretty good." And he said, "That's damn good." And and he said, "Well, you must be Joe Pierce." He said, "I am." He said, "I'm Captain Reining." So the two met and discussed Joe's background with cattle ranching and other things, which they were catching a lot of rustlers. And he hired him on the spot, and he became Arizona Ranger wearing badge number 13. But the reason that the Colt single action is my Grail gun is that here's a picture of him not long before his death. He actually had, we'll try to get a close up of this, but he'd actually been out when he was about 80 years old breaking a Colt. Imagine that. And the Colt goes down with him and broke his hip. And during that time, he had a hard time getting hit the hill. So he went to Phoenix, which he lived in the White Mountains of Arizona. It's quite a trip down there. And he met a gentleman that was also in rehab there for another thing at this facility. And his name was Marty Robbins. You might have heard of him. And Marty, when he realized who Joe Pierce was and his background, would pick his brain on stories of the Arizona Rangers and so forth and so on. Well, meanwhile, that hip wouldn't heal, and they didn't have very good medical technology at that time. And he ultimately developed cancer in that hip, and he died at age 84, 85. And he 85. And he was, meanwhile, Marty Robbins was influenced and wrote the song that you probably heard before, "Big Iron on His Hip," and he gave the very first copy of that to my grandmother. So, but I'm leading up to a story here. I'm hurrying, guys. But it ultimately, the Colt that he carried as a Ranger, he actually had several of them, but the Colt that he carried as a Ranger was of course a 45. Had steerhead carved pearl grips on it, and we don't know where it's at. It disappeared. He had 9 children. It went somewhere in the family. We have no idea where it's at. So I have a gun made from the same era, carved steerhead, mother of pearl stalks on it, and but I do not have the original. So that would be my Grail gun, is to have my grandfather's original. He wrote many articles and stories in various books, magazines, newspapers. I've compiled those, and I felt like, even though he died before I knew him, before I was born, I always felt like I knew him through his writings. I really connected with him, and that's where Joe got his name, was Joe Pierce. So anyway, we'll talk about the 30-40 Craig in a minute.
Jake? I'm curious to see what Jake says.
Well, I know what Jake's going to choose.
A Thompson submachine gun.
That was my first thought.
Well, my first one would be a 1921 Colt Thompson.
Yep, see?
Yeah.
Called it.
Yeah.
Yep.
None of this remanufactured semi-auto bullshit.
Yep.
Or just the crappy design that, anyways.
They can't leave a good design.
I know, they got to go and modernize it for, all the import this and that and everything else. And
ATF rules.
And it's just stupid,
Another senseless government organization that ruining good guns,
Yeah.
But yeah, that'd be my first pick. Colt 1921, specifically the 1921 Thompson. to go along with my Model T Ford when I get that, or my 1934 V8 Ford.
Ford,
yeah.
I can outrun those coffers.
Yeah. The funny part about that is, it's like, if I could totally see Jake driving a Model T. Like, it fits him so well.
28 miles an hour.
With his Colt Thompson.
Well, if I, people always say, like, if I win the lottery, I won't tell you, but there'll be signs. And it's like, if I win the lottery, there'll be signs. And a Model T or 1934 V8 Ford is going to be my daily driver.
Man, those things were small inside.
I don't care. They're cool.
Yeah.
And I'll go the extra step of armor plating it.
Armor would be even better.
Pump up the engine a little bit.
Yep.
All right, Joe, what's your number one pick?
My number one, it's kind of hard. There's two. Obviously, we each got to pick two, and there's two that were pretty clear and easy choices for me. So first, I had to pick an AR-15, and that would be an
AR boy.
an original Car 15 XM177 E2, the old Colt automatic from Vietnam. The XM177 was the shorter, kind of their patrol style rifle, had an integrated suppressor and all that. This one I just built because it was I wanted a nice quad rail gun, kind of as my early 2000s gun, or Desert Storm, whatever you want to call it. But the Colt Car 15 to me is one of the coolest 1911s in history by far. That
AR-15s?
Yeah, AR-15. And then that one, and then the M16A1 is a really cool one. So I think it'd be cool though to have originals in both of those original Colts. So someday. Those Colt collectors though are pretty stingy. they don't let go of their stuff very often, so it's pretty rare that cool stuff like that goes up for sale. But
I used to have one.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Porter didn't have a second one, so back to Dad.
I could say something, but
So back to me. So I covered this in another video, but the Arizona Rangers shown on the 1963, I think it is, catalog, 62 catalog, Winchester catalog, and inside it talks about them being Texas Rangers. Well, these were the Arizona Rangers, and of course they're all sporting Model 95 Winchester rifles. And as I told you a minute ago, we don't know where the guns are that my grandfather used while he was in the Ranger, but he did use a 3040. Well, it's actually a 30 US, which we call the 3040 Craig today, and a Model 95 Winchester. Very unique gun. Of course, had a ladder sight that stood up and would allow him to shoot out at long range. And it was a truly modern rifle, and it was for the era, meaning that they were still on horses and still track bad men and long treks, and the lever gun carries on a horse better than any other gun. And but Captain Thomas Reining, he taught the Rangers to do two things. He'd teach them to slide off the back of their horse, pull their rifle off at the same time, and he'd have some impromptu target, and he'd say, "You got to hit that first shot, and you have to do it right now." So they'd jump off the lever, boom, and hit it, and they trained until they all could hit very, very well at longer ranges. And they he even trained them to lay their horses down and get behind them and shoot with their Colts, the same as the military had done, at a quarter-mile distance and even further. So they were practicing long-range shooting at that time. So the training was quite interesting, just overall. But that would be my second Grail gun right there, to have my grandfather's Ranger guns, if you will. I'm going to tell you one other story about this, and I don't like to hog up the time here, but it's worth telling. So even after my grandfather had retired from the Rangers, or the Rangers had been shut down, whatever, he, of course, was a rancher. He became undersheriff for Apache County in Arizona, which is the White Mountains, Springerville, Eager, that region. And there's a reservation right there, and there was guys that would come in and steal stock and push it off from the Indians, from the Native Americans. and just kind of causing trouble all the time. And the government knew that Grandpa had developed a reputation as being the best tracker of all the rangers, and so they would constantly contact him and say, by telegraph, and they'd say, we have stolen horses, stolen cows, whatever it is, typically horses actually, and they're headed south, we know that, and we need you to intercept and arrest them as fast as possible. So he would make a track and go chase them down, catch them. And this was even after he'd retired from the Rangers by many, many years. And sometimes he would employ Native Americans to help him track, or to, as additional help.
His good Native American friend was named Loco Joe. He's one of my favorites from Grandpa's old stories.
Yeah.
They called him Loco Joe because loco in Spanish means crazy, but they called him Loco Joe because he was crazy good in a fight, in Grandpa Joe's words. So, crazy good in a fight. That's the kind of guy you want on your side. So crazy good.
I need him.
And that's, people ask me all the time, like, why do you like Tomahawk so much? And it was because growing up listening to stories of Loco Joe, and I always like, man, I need a cool Tomahawk.
That's Joe's new name.
Yeah, Loco Joe. Yeah. Or Loco Jim. It was Loco Jim. Loco Jim, yeah. Anyways, then I always loved Tomahawks because of that. I was like, wow, that's cool, and so I love my Tomahawks if you watch any of our other videos. But
well, my grandfather, he met some really rough characters on the frontier. As a kid growing up, Geronimo came into his home unannounced, as they typically did at that time. He knew the Apache Kid. There's actually a really kind of interesting story there. He knew Sheriff Perry, famous for his long hair and shootouts, and good marksmanship too. He knew a lot of rough characters very well. He was right in the midst of all that. He was right in the middle of the Tewksbury-Graham feud, or what's known as the Pleasant Valley War. And he knew both sides. They stayed neutral in it, he and his family. But a story I was going to share, a couple of them actually. He actually rode frequently with Jeff Kidder, who was one of the more famous rangers with his shooting ability. And they were trailing these one really bad guys, and they had him cornered. They caught up with him. It'd been a hard catch to catch up with him. And they started shooting, the outlaws started shooting at him with their 6 guns. And Jeff Kidder pulled down his rifle and says, I'm going to kill him right there. And my grandfather reached over and bumped his rifle up and said, nope, we want to take him alive. Captain Ryan said, if possible, always take him alive. We'd rather make an example of him by putting him in the territorial prison, which was the worst place in the world. That jail was literally from hell. But Jeff Kidder was really mad at my grandfather for bumping his shot off and not letting him kill him. Anyway, they regrouped, trailed him down, and got him captured. And Jeff Kidder later went into Mexico. It's a very famous shootout, and got in a very, very hideous shootout. And the only gun he had was a single action Colt, but he wound up getting killed. And it was a very long shootout and tough. I mean, he died very, very tough. But one story I was going to share about Grandpa and this rifle that kind of stood out, and it's not well known, but some California hunters had come into the White Mountains and were hunting, and they don't think they were even hunting grizzlies, but at the time they went ahead and they got into at least 3 grizzlies, and they wounded 2 of them, and they got away. They lost them. And so they came back into town, told everybody what happened, and so everybody's now where Eager and Springerville are, they're over 7,000 feet elevation, so you're in the mountains anyway, but they were like, the concern was somebody is going to bump into those wounded grizzlies, and the grizzly's going to kill them. So my grandfather went out there and took his 30-40 Craig, or his 30 US 95 Winchester, went out and trailed them up and killed those bears. And so he was more than just a lawman, but he was a very, very outstanding hunter. And interesting thing was, he spoke 5 languages. So pretty much anybody he met on the frontier, he could talk to them conversely in various Indian languages, Mexican, English, sort of. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
It was the last language on the frontier of that area.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that'd be my other Grail gun. No idea where they're at. I was told here about 3 or 4 years ago that a Colt that belonged to my grandfather had been in a bar in the Springerville Eager, Arizona area for years and years. I swung by, met the gentleman that had the gun. He verified in that, but there's no documentation that belonged to him. As a 5.5-inch Colt, pretty pitted, but the bore was good and it shoots good. And I said, if you ever want to sell it, let me know. Well, I went home. He said, no, I don't want to sell it. A few months later, I get this call, and he said, if you want to buy that gun, I'll sell it. And so he named his price, and I mailed him a check, and I still have that gun. But whether it was bona fide belonged to Joe or not, I don't know. But I know that at one time he was trailing rustlers, and the rustler roped the horse, and the rope caught under the gun and flipped it out of the guy's holster. And when they were trailing these outlaws up, they found the gun, and that may have been the gun that I ended up with. So anyway, that's my other Grail gun.
All right, Jake.
There's only one of each of those out there that I chose, so my chances of ever getting them are pretty slim.
Pretty slim.
Well, my next one, I just gotta wait for Dad to get old and die off. So
Gotta wait for Dad to get old and die off.
You're not gonna shoot me off, are you?
yeah. So Dad's got a Colt single action that he restored and had engraved, silver plated, duplicated General Patton's single action that he carried in Mexico and World War II and stuff. And of all his Colts, I think that's one of my favorites that he owns. And so I would rather
watch out. Jake's gonna knock you off, Dad.
Guess if Dad ever dies a mysterious death, we'll know where to look.
Lead poisoning.
Gotta wait for Dad to get old and die off.
I'm glad to know you.
That's almost too good.
So yeah, that's my second one. So if you ever want to sell it, Dad, let me know. I can't afford it, so you might as well just hang on to it.
You might have to give it up so you'll wind up dead.
Well, I wanted to do that gun forever. I wish I'd known that, Jake. I'd have brought it so I could show pictures of it. But I did a video on it here.
Yeah, I'll put some close-up video.
I need to do one of John Wesley Hardin's old guns. That would be one that would be a good one.
So that's Porter's second, one of John Wesley Hardin's guns.
Yeah. Probably a Schofield.
Schofield. That's cool. Yep. All right, my turn, I guess.
Yep.
So my last one, it's actually more attainable than anything else, I think, and it's just I want a nice, fancy, custom 1911. 1911s are cool. They've been around for a long time. They have a lot of neat history behind them. Obviously, they were the longest handgun to see service in the U.S. military. It went from 1911 all the way to like 2021, I think, when they officially dropped the M45A1. So over 100 years of continuous service by the U.S. military.
And technically, Joe, there's
probably still some in
there's tons of special forces that still use them.
So not as much anymore.
Well, I think they dropped them, in 2021. Marines dropped them, as far as I was...
Well, the Green Berets, I know for a fact that most of them got away from the 1911s because some of the Glocks and stuff are a better option for out and outright durability.
Yeah. So. Anyways, but I'm not quite sure what I'd want that gun to be, but it'd have to be blued for sure, and then some fancy stocks on there. I don't know what they'd wind up being.
Might put in
maybe some ironwood. And maybe engraved. I don't know. I'd have to think that over some, but I'd probably get some ironwood grips on it, and then have like a matching knife or something to go along with it. So ivory'd be cool too. Yeah.
Yeah, tell the government go to hell and just get some ivory anyways.
Anyway, I mean, there's a lot of neat 1911s, but Series 70 for sure, because the Series 80 trigger isn't as great, and Series 70 is just better. Anyways, so that's what it'd have to be. I'd look at either Alchemy or Nighthawk or somebody and have them make a nice fancy.
Well, you can always steal Dan's Wilson Combat.
Yeah.
There you go. Damn, now two of them what you did.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm still on your side.
Still on your side. Yeah. Well, and I was just talking to Jake about this, but Alchemy released their newest resto mod. They do 4 resto mods a year, and they're all kind of a special edition 1911. And those are all really cool. I mean, that'd be cool. If I was rich enough, I'd buy every one they do, but they're not a cheap gun. But the most recent one they did was a Swenson Bobcat, is what they called it. And Eli actually has the gun they base that off of, but it's pretty cool. That's a really cool looking gun. I love the checkered grips and two-tone look. That's a neat looking gun. So,
Yeah.
anyways, but a fancy custom 1911, that'd be my other Grail gun. But 4 young kids and trying to run a YouTube channel, buying a $7,000 or $8,000 1911 is exactly in my near future. So, but yeah, someday that'll be a big purchase I make. So, yep.
All right.
Yeah.
I think that's it for Grail Guns.
Yeah, let us know what your Grail guns are in the comments, and let it flow. Yeah, as many as you want to name. The more comments, the better. So, yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning in and sticking to the end. We'll see you guys next time on the Pierce Brothers.
See ya.